Again, my name is Mark McCullough, and I'll be your moderator this morning. We have a couple of orders of business to address in this special meeting of the Unitarian Universalist Society of Bangor, so I welcome everyone to stay and participate in that. So before we really get started, the first order of business is to establish a quorum and determine if we have a quorum, which is 20% of our membership. And so we have people on Zoom, and I need to know who is monitoring a computer for Zoom input. Okay, you're going to do that, Sue. So if you are a member of the UUSB and you are on Zoom, then write yes into the chat. And while you're doing that, you might want to just make sure that the name that you're using on your Zoom account reflects your actual name so we know who you are. So Sue, you're going to monitor Zoom and count up how many members. Leanne, Lori, Leanne. Oh, Leanne will do it. And let's do that here in the sanctuary. Before we do the sanctuary, Leanne, do we know if we have anybody on the phone today? Okay, so we have Zoom and in the sanctuary. So here, 2 people on the phone. And how might they, okay. Okay, so Lori can hear the 2 people on the phone. And here in the sanctuary, those of you who are members, please raise your hand.
What's the definition of a member?
That's gone through the membership class and signed the book and participated in a service where they were recognized as a member. Yes. Okay, I will help to count those. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 16, 18, 19, 20. I have 33 in the sanctuary here.
And we have 16 on the Zoom.
16 on the Zoom, and have we discerned the 2 phone call-in people members?
Hi, I'm on the phone. This is Pat.
So I will do the math. We have 51 people. Excellent. Yes, we have a quorum, which means that we can proceed with all the business that we need to do today. Excellent. Thanks everybody for coming. Yes, so the next thing, Sue McKay is going to lead us in some opening words. We have some opening words that will appear on the screen here shortly.
There hasn't been time to do anything over here. I've got to go out of this and I've got to go into the other slide. Lori, why don't you start, turn my mic on and I'll take it from here. Which mic are you on? This one?
Okay, nope. Not happy. Okay, we'll do it from here. So, this will not be unusual to you. It'll be very familiar to many of you. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, that all shall grow into the harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant with each other and with God.
Thank you,
Gosh, I think I left out a line or two, but
We used to do that every Sunday, a long time ago. It's been a while. So thank you. And it's very appropriate too, given what we're going to be discussing later this morning. So I want to just spell out a few rules or ways to work for the folks that are on Zoom. So I already said it, make sure that your name is accurate on your Zoom account so that we know who you are. And we'll make an opportunity for those two individuals that are on the phone during the process when we vote, and if they wish to say something, Lori, you're going to be monitoring the phone calls, and if they wish to participate by phone, they can do that. So please feel that you're part of the meeting as well. So when it comes time to vote, for those of you who are on the Zoom call, we're going to do that through the chat box. So just write in yes or no in the chat box. And if there are two or possibly even more of you who are members at home on Zoom, and if you would just perhaps indicate that there are two of you and there's 2 votes for yes. Again, they have to be members to be able to vote. But if you could indicate who's voting yes or no, please do that in the chat box. And again, voting on any of the items that we vote on today is for current official members, but anyone else is welcome to participate in the discussion. And those of you who are on Zoom, if you have questions or you have discussion items that you would like to have addressed or brought up, please type those into the chat box. And we'll have a person, Leanne will be monitoring that, and we'll make sure that your questions and your input are part of our meeting. So with that, let's start our orders of our items of the agenda, which has been posted for the last couple of weeks. And the first item is to vote on proposed changes to our UUSB bylaws. And the way we're going to address these issues is first we'll have a discussion period, and then we'll entertain a motion. And in this case, I know that council has been working on this issue for quite a while, and they have a motion prepared. But first, to learn a little bit about what's being proposed for changes to the bylaws, we're going to take a few minutes to talk about that. So Sue, I'll let you go ahead.
yes, Lori, if we could go to the next slide, please. Next slide. That just showed the words I forgot. To give you just a little bit of background, we discovered when the nominating committee was getting ready to prepare a slate for the annual meeting that there were some inconsistencies in the way our bylaws currently read, and we wanted to make them much more clear. So what we're going to be asking for today would be a vote to accept the changes in total. The wordsmithing has been done now for months. I want to thank Kathy Elliott and Will Seavey for doing the lion's share of the work on this. So what you see on your screen are notes about the fact that there were some changes in punctuation, some things needed to be capitalized that weren't capitalized, those kind of things. But the primary things that we're going to be talking about is, and we can switch to the next one, Lori. Some background on Article 7, Section 2, that deals with council and election and term. It currently states that all members of council are elected to 3-year terms, but in Article 8, under Officers of the Society, Section 8-3, Officer Election and Term, it states that the treasurer and clerk are elected annually at the annual meeting. To correct this, the sentence that talked about them being elected annually, that's the clerk and the treasurer, We are proposing get moved back into, or moved up into Article 7. The next proposed change, background. So the article, having taken out the treasurer and clerk being elected at the annual meeting, coming out of, another place and being put where all the other council members are listed, that is the section 8.3. So you can see the rewrite there. The next section, the second section for proposed changes, the background is this. In a previous bylaws revision, the required number of council members was changed from 9 to 7 to 9. That's Article 7 under Council, Section 7.1. In the same article, Section 7.2, Election and Term, Item C, there's a provision for removing a council member for cause. It currently requires an affirmative vote by 7 council members. You're laughing because you can figure out where I'm going with this, right? So what we're recommending is we do 3/4 of the council rather than all 7. So it would read, a council member may be removed for cause as determined by the council by an affirmative vote of 3/4 of the council members. Any such council member shall be notified of such pending action and be given the right to speak to the council prior to any vote for removal. Third section. Third section. One more, please. Is that it? Okay, my apologies, The third section, the background on this one. In Article 7, Council, Section 7.3, Powers and Duties, Item Q, it says that Council appoints the Stewardship Committee, but in Article 13, Understanding Committees, Section 13.1, Nominating Committee, Item B, it says that the Nominating Committee nominates the chair of the Stewardship Committee, who is then elected at the annual meeting. The proposed change to Section 7.3Q reflects that the Stewardship Chair is elected at the meeting rather than the whole committee. The proposed change it's easier for me to read it up here. So the powers and duties of the council in this section to appoint members of the Stewardship Committee, except the chair, to plan and implement the annual pledge drive. The Stewardship Committee chair shall be elected at the annual meeting of the society. Next one, please. In Article 13, Standing Committees, Section 13.1, Item D, the first sentence is unnecessary and somewhat confusing. It's unnecessary because Article 7, Council, Section 7.3, Item O, states that Council appoints the moderator and gives the moderator procedural guidance. It's confusing because the wording could be understood to mean that the moderator actually nominates the members of the nominating committee, which is certainly not the case. So the rewrite for that one will be, it shall be the responsibility of the moderator at the annual meeting to call for and supervise the election of a... Oh, that's the current one. My apologies. I should have practiced more. In the event of a vacancy occurs, the nominating committee, in the event a vacancy occurs on the nominating committee between annual meetings, the council shall appoint an active member of the society to fill such vacancy until the next annual meeting. So that clears that up. Kathy, I'm going to look to you. I believe that's it. Okay. So if there are any questions, concerns that you would like me to address, I'm happy to do it before Mark asks for a motion to accept.
Correct. So any questions about what you just heard?
Kathy?
Kathy?
Hi, not really a question. I just wanted to make the point that these changes are not substantive. They're to clarify. We're not changing the substance of the bylaws. It's just making it clear who does what, when, where, why. Thank you.
Mr. Moderator, back to you.
Yeah, any other questions on the floor? Were there any questions that came in, Leanne, from Zoom folks that are participating? Nobody from the phone callers. Okay, so I would like to call for a motion as to how to address this particular issue, and I understand council is ready to submit a motion.
On behalf of the UUSB Council, I move that we accept these changes, these clarifications to the bylaws as presented.
Okay, so we have a motion and it's been seconded, and the next, is there any discussion of this motion to accept these changes to the bylaws? Take a moment here. I'm not seeing anything in the sanctuary. You seeing anything in Zoom? Just take another moment. Okay, I think then we're ready to vote on these changes to the bylaws and the motion that's been proposed. All those in favor, raise your hand in the sanctuary, and all those on Zoom, please put yes in the chat box. And Sue, could you maybe help do a count of the affirmative votes here in the sanctuary? Thank you. It looks unanimous. Okay. Yeah,
That's democracy in action.
okay. I don't think anybody left, and there were 33 in my initial count, so let's say that it's unanimous here. And unanimous on Zoom. And I forgot to acknowledge Jessica, who is here. And so she's recording the minutes for the meeting, correct, Jessica? And you can record that it was a unanimous vote, both on Zoom and here in the sanctuary. So the motion passes. Yay. Okay, our second order of business relates to our service that we had today and the 8th principle. As you've heard today in the service, there's a lot of change in the air at the UUA, and a number of different proposals to change the Second Amendment, proposals to add an additional principle to our list of principles. And so there's been a lot of discussion in UU churches about this particular issue. So we've had a wonderful service here today to introduce this to many of us who are hearing some of this for the first time. Maybe some of us have been hearing this for a number of months. But at any rate, I wanted to give maybe a few minutes, as we just did with the last agenda item, to ask questions, to clarify what it is we're addressing in this particular agenda item, and what we might accomplish today, and then I will ask for a motion. But this is a time right now for the next few minutes for folks to maybe ask some questions or clarify some things or better understand what's happening. So, yes, Francis, maybe you can start.
I was just going to say, if we're going to consider this, can we have someone read it, just read off the language again?
I think the Eighth Amendment, did you put it, or the eighth principle, is on the screen? Okay.
We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association, covenant to affirm and promote journeying towards spiritual wholeness by working to build a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. And maybe I can address a couple questions before they even come up. For many of you, this is the first you've heard of it. For those of you who memorize everything in your chalice and chimes, this was first introduced back in October. Because of everything that has gone on in the fall, and you know there's been a lot of stuff going on here this fall, Reverend Drew didn't really do a service on this. So it is new to many of you. And my understanding, and the people who have done some research on this, please help me if I'm incorrect with this. We talked today about Article 2, and then we've talked about the eighth principle, and then we talked about the principles all changing and being in that cute little flower petal kind of pinwheel thing. My understanding is the goal for the people that want this to be passed, want it so that the principles, the 7 of them, that will remain part of our history, but will kind of sit on a shelf with the prior versions, that this would be incorporated and sit on that shelf with those 7. So at the annual meeting, we'll be talking about Article 2, and if you want, we can delay a vote until the annual meeting to give people more time to become familiar with this. So you are not under the pressure of having to vote on this today. But if Article 2 doesn't pass at the UUA level, and the 7 principles remain as is, the people supporting this want this to be an important part, serving as the 8th principle. Is that the way everybody who's been studying this feels it's supposed to be? Okay. Now I'm ready for more questions.
Okay, Rosemary?
I am not clear on how Article 2 and the proposed 8th principle fit together. Is the principle part of Article 2? See, that's...
Unfortunately, that's what I just tried to explain, and obviously did a terrible job of it. My apologies, everybody. So the way it will work, if Article 2 passes, and we're not here for a discussion about Article 2, but if it passes, then the principles that we know, the 7 that we know, will be put on a shelf along with the other versions of the principles from our past heritage. Put away. Right. They become part of our history, but the new version would be the circle with the petals. Whoops. Mark, you want to?
Oh, yes, Catherine, go ahead. Go ahead.
I
and
don't
select
understand
people.
what you mean by putting on the shelf. Do they get erased in our list of principles, or what? I just don't understand.
I'm not going to use the word erased. I'm going to use the word archived, because if Article 2 passes, and that won't be finally voted on until 2024, but if it passes, when we then look at the principles, it won't be inherent worth and dignity of every person, blah, 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 those 7.
or in this case, 8. It won't be there any more than the 1966 version is there. It will be archived. It will be part of our history. And what you saw on that screen with love in the middle and the petals coming out, that will be the version going forward. Just, well, the words, but they do have explanations that go with them. They're a little bit longer. I call it the flower. It's designed like a pinwheel, and what I was told was the reason that's designed like a pinwheel is because no one petal is more important than another. And in your studies, and we will be offering opportunities if we decide to postpone this vote, we'll be offering opportunities for people to meet and have discussion about it. The people that part of the book read for the common read are already engaged in conversation about it.
Go ahead and select people there, Sue. That's helpful.
Okay, hi, this is Kathy Elliott. So I just wanted to add to what Sue said. I think what I understood is that the new Article 2 won't be voted on until the 2024. So if this principle, 8th principle, gets passed at this year's 2023 General Assembly, it becomes our 8th principle, ongoing until and if a new Article 2 is passed. So if this gets approved, it becomes our 8th principle, and until something else gets changed, it will remain our 8th principle.
Thank you, Kathy, appreciate that.
It's my understanding that, yes, indeed, Zoomers, I'm Lori Cartier. I'll come out and try to get in the screen. I wanted to say that I do believe that the amendment will be voted on at GA this year. However, it will then go into a year of study before it becomes the way we do our principles. So if the 8th principle is voted in, it will just be for that. And the amendment is passed, it will just be for the next year, and then it will be onward and forward. I think because we have such a mixed and limited understanding of what all this is going to mean, I would really like us to see doing further education on this and not necessarily voting on this today.
Leanne, can I ask right at this moment, do we have some questions coming from the folks on Zoom? Maybe we could field a couple of those.
Thank you, Mark. There is one comment from Sue Henry McKenzie asking, does Article 2 mean an integration of the proposed 8th principle?
Rissa's got something?
So that flower thing, this is Rissa. Thank you for the reminder. This is Rissa Moore, and when Reverend Sarah was talking about the flower, she put each of the new, I don't know if they'll be called principles, but she put each of the petals on with its wording. And in that wording was a lot of this, because that's what I was looking for. So this would be now, and the petals would incorporate this going forward.
Tim?
I'm Tim. I just wanted to sort of reinforce what Rissa said. The people that did the Article 2, the new one, the Article 2 Commission, was charged by the UUA board when they did it to include all the concepts of the 8th principle. That was a part of their charge. And they explain in the thing that Valerie posted. The commission itself explains in real detail what their process was and how they went about writing it. So the new Article 2 does include the eighth principle, but it's not listed as an eighth principle. It's incorporated into justice and inclusion and something else.
I was.
You are whom?
Oh, I'm Bruce. Looking at the 7 principles, they seem like very permanent fixtures, kind of like Constitution, our beliefs. This one seems more, the 8th one to me seems more transitory, like issues that come up in society, you know, and I would, beyond what's listed here, there's the word there, other oppressions, and I would think, well, what about the Ukrainians? What about the poor people? I'm wondering if those would be better served by sort of a mission that we take on rather than adding it as a principle, because I think those principles are sacred, to me anyway. The change is going to be hard, but I don't think this quite fits in the same way as the first 7.
Sue, can you maybe come over? Leanne, I think, has quite a few from Zoom, so it might be good to give them a chance.
We have a comment from Glenn Kaler. The version shown for the 8th principle is wordy. Too many words dilute the meaning and memorability. I suggest that the words journeying towards spiritual wholeness by be removed. Those words are not essential to the principle and could apply to any principle. I'm going to jump in and make a comment that editing this principle is not within our power, because this is a principle sent to us by the Unitarian Universalist Association, written by committee for the past 5 years, I believe, right? Or 10 years, right? It's already been in committee for over 10 years, Lee, so I'm not sure. But anyway, we have another comment, from Aaron CV, sorry, agree on postponing and doing further discussion or education. Tracy Haskell responds, I think it is a little confusing to clump a discussion of Article 2 with the proposed 8th principle, which I'm hearing that confusion as well. I am understanding that we shall be voting on the 8th principle at our general meeting this year, or annual meeting, I assume she means, but the Article 2 is for further consideration. Joan Ellis adds, I think it is wordy and not to the point, will be hard to explain to others about UU, needs editing. Oh, it's not Joan Ellis. Who else is on? Sorry. Hi, Joan. Joan Rickert. That must be Joan Rickert. Sorry, Joan. Joan's iPad. I always think that's Joan Ellis. Sorry. Can you hold it for a second?
Could you read Joan Rickart's again there, the last one? I didn't quite get all
Joan
that.
Rickert states, I think it is wordy and not to the point, will be hard to explain to others about UU, needs editing. James Shimko shares, can a vote on the 8th principle now and Article 2 later? The answer is that's what's on the floor right now, is a vote on the 8th principle and not Article 2.
Well, we don't have anything on the floor yet.
True,
We're just
technically.
learning at this point in time. We will entertain a motion when we've finished our discussion here.
Laura Santilli says they're coming in fast and furious now. These are not UUSB words, right? The 8th principle words come from the UUA committee, right? Correct, Laura? And then she adds, I'm super uncomfortable that I do not believe any people of color are here to comment. How are we whites knowing better than the committee? And James agrees with Tracy. So, all right, that's all from Zoom right now.
Thank you, people on Zoom. Walking in your direction, Francis. And then Lee.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that myself personally, I very strongly support adopting the eighth principle, whether it's today or at some future time, whenever the congregation is ready. But I just feel it's very important, you know, in this age of very contentious and difficult issues around police reform, and in the age of the Black Lives Matter movement, and so many atrocities and terrible things have happened to especially African American people in our country, that, you know, I think this language has been, you know, worked on for a long time and debated and wordsmithed. And, you know, some of us here are only kind of finding out about this recently, and you know, realizing what's happening and what's being discussed and what's being proposed. But, you know, working, you know, the key thing here is working towards a diverse, multicultural, beloved community, you know, and trying to be actively involved in anti-racism. You know, and I missed the first meeting of the Common Read book group, but I read the first 3 chapters or whatever. And, you know, if you're reading the Common Read book, it's very interesting because they talk about the difference between being an ally and being an accomplice, right? And so they're saying, well, we can all say we're an ally to African American people and anti-racism, you know, but it's one thing to be an ally, it's another thing to be an accomplice. An accomplice is someone who actively tries to oppose racism and white supremacy. So anyway, that's just my feeling on it.
Lee's next, and then Catherine, and then Dick.
I had an original question, but first I'd like to say I concur with the several people who have said that this, and actually all the principles, are quite wordy. And I understand why they were set up that way to explain them. But it would be nice that if there were a phrase or something underlined that would help to clarify. My original question had to do with the study commission for the new flower thing, which name I'm not sure of what it's called, the new rendition of principles in flower form. Will that committee have the right to make suggestions and bring them to discussion and vote? I don't see the point of having a study commission if it has no power to report out and make things change if absolutely necessary, or at least talked about.
As has been mentioned already, this has been worked on for like a decade, and it will be voted on at the General Assembly in June. And by the way, we need delegates, so if you're interested in being a delegate, let me know, because our delegates will go and they will represent our position that we will form at our annual meeting. Catherine?
This isn't terribly, okay, I'm Catherine Foxen. But like right now we have cards with our principles on them. So when we talk with someone who's not a member of the congregation, inviting them, we've got this to show them our principles. Are we going to then have just a card with the flower on it?
We don't know what the PR department at the UUA will be putting out for materials, but that card will not be in existence if Article 2 is updated. Dick?
Yeah, I'm, when it comes to this kind of discussion and politics and Robert's Rules of Order and everything else, I'm a kind of a bear of little brain here. But one of the reasons that I really got excited about the Unitarian Universalist Church a few years ago was when I finally got a poster of the 7 principles. It's up on my kitchen door, and I look at it every day. And I don't know what's in this that's not already subsumed by the 7 principles. And this doesn't look like a principle to me. It looks like a political statement, which is different from a principle. And so I'm a little confused, I guess, perhaps.
You're not confused. That's why there's a lot of discussion, and I think the UUA General Assembly meeting will be very interested in people's opinions.
Dick speaks my mind. I'm Linda Sisson, and I feel odd saying anything as more of a newbie here, but I do not like the idea of this 8th principle because it reads like a more of a vision or a sort of an action item for congregations, and that I'm glad Tim pointed out that the new flower model is to support these actions without all the words. So I would hope that we put this aside and then focus on what the new diagram would be. And I would just say that when I was part of a Quaker meeting, it was so easy to remember what we believed because it was SPICE: simplicity, peace, integrity, community, and equality. And I'm all for the flower in that respect because it would be nice to be able to just remember easily.
Thank you, Catherine.
Catherine Foxen again. If I understand correctly, the proposed 8th principle would disappear along with all the other principles if Article 2 passes, and that would only be there for a year before it's archived?
Please keep in mind that it's not a sure thing that Article 2 will pass. So, as I said earlier when I first opened this up, which feels like 5 hours ago, I apologize, but they want this passed because if Article 2 doesn't pass, and people want to keep the original 7, they want this added to the original 7. If Article 2 passes, we have the new flower thing, and this would be archived along with the other 7. Yeah.
Mike Howard shares, I'm inclined to support the 8th principle. However, I worry that the congregation has not made time to process the proposed change and its implications, as well as the implications of voting it down. So I would support voting at the meeting in May with concerted education in the meantime. We also hear from Wendy Erickson, this may be a small thing, but I wondered if anyone has considered the children and youth in our C program. How will these changes impact their understanding of it in a meaningful way? Many were raised on the 7 principles, and they are part of their identity. Then Glenn Kaler calls Wendy Erickson a saint, if you use that saints. And wait, I've got one more.
I want to remind people that we are a living tradition and we evolve. And this is part of that evolving process. If we were to look back at the 1966 principles, they probably thought those were pretty good, and why are we going to change them? So I would ask people to keep an open mind. Rosemary?
I make a motion that we approve the proposed 8th principle. Is there a second?
Wait, Rosemary, I have not called for, we're still in a discussion phase. I've not called for a motion.
I tried.
Yet. Okay.
Patty Alcott?
Patty Alcott. I just thought that we were going to be voting on adding an 8th principle. Therefore, there would be 8 principles instead of 7. Now I find out that we're going to put the 7 on a shelf somewhere and archive them and replace them with a flower. And I can't even remember now what the flower exactly says. So that stuff is really important to me. And also, what happened to our 7 principles? I mean,
Isn't that the basis, the foundation of everything?
They will tell you that those petals incorporate the spirit of the current 7 principles, and this apparently as well. We haven't talked about Article 2 at all. Article 2 will be part of a discussion at the annual meeting. The agenda for the annual meeting is not yet set. That's why you're not aware of it. We will have the option, if people want to vote to postpone this rather than do an up or down. So if you're confused, wait a little bit until Mark is ready and we have all of our comments made.
Nice observation from Kat Allen. Can you hold this for a second? Kat Allen shares, a few weeks ago, we learned during a service that Dr. Martin Luther King and Coretta Scott King had at one point considered doing their work through the UU Church, but ultimately did not choose to take that path. In the time since then, I've been wondering about what influenced their decision and about whether they would make the same choice in the context of our UU community today. I don't know the answer, but at the moment, I'm leaning towards adopting the 8th principle, even though the wording itself is not what I would prefer, because supporting the spirit of it sets the stage for moving forward in a new way that is ultimately more equitable. I'm open to learning more. Laura shares that she's disappointed we have not been studying this for months, and sorry, I can't keep up.
Okay, I see 2 more.
Okay, I think we'll take, just a couple more minutes. I'm thinking 3 to 5 minutes, and making sure that people that haven't had a chance to speak maybe have a chance to.
I just wanted to, I want to make sure, I'd like to get Lori Cartier to speak on this because she's been leading the Come and Read discussion group. So anyway, I think I would like to hear her thoughts.
I think there were some folks back here that haven't had a chance to talk yet.
I'm only seeing repeats, but.
Hi, I just think it's premature to vote on something which has a lot of implications that we don't even know about, particularly just because a lot of people really didn't have any grasp of this until recently, including myself.
Yes, Lee, that is an option. While I'm walking around to Bruce, I'm going to send out an apology to you all because this didn't get addressed much earlier. This could have been addressed. I mean, Ellsworth adopted this last year. We've been reading articles of congregations that adopted it in 2021. I can't explain why it wasn't brought up. Reverend Drew has been through a lot. This congregation this fall was through a lot. We've actually had 3 different chairs in about 4 months' time. So if you wouldn't mind cutting us a little slack, we're trying to do the best job we can to make up for lost time. And again, if you want to postpone it, that's an option.
It's kind of a segue into what you just said. From a systems perspective, I'm not real comfortable with when you say they want this added, or this pinwheel came from them, and I'm not sure who they are, but I always thought that from the ground up, from the congregation, and that's just my comment.
The UUA has its own board of directors, and they have study commissions. And this came out of a study commission, as did the potential rewrite. The UUA Board of Directors, and we are a member congregation of the UUA, they have put forth this Article 2 change. They put it out there. The congregations are asked to study it, give their opinions, and then their delegates meaning our delegates, if we have any that want to be a delegate, will be discussing this at the end of June at the General Assembly. That's how it works. We have our own bylaws. We've just done some work on that. This is the bylaws of the UUA. That's who the they is. I apologize, Bruce. I got to go over here to Lori, and they'll be right over.
Hi, this is Lori Cartier. I just wanted to say that in the process, if we decide for further discussion, we can discover amongst ourselves and within our own hearts how we work as a beloved community and how multiculturalism fits into that, and whether this would become a covenant that we would make to ourselves, the wording of this principle, or whether we would approve this as a principle that we'd like to see. I'd really like us to do a lot more of this discussion. And I'm willing to help lead those discussions. And the book group is also going to be talking more about this. So anybody could join us on the first Sunday of the month. But I just really feel like this is a call to action. And part of that action is doing the work to embody what this is trying to say to us before we pass it into what we believe should be an eighth principle.
I think Joni had her hand up, and I think maybe we'll end the discussion with Joni's comments and move towards a motion.
Joni Ellis. Personally, I'm in favor of adopting the eighth principle, although I'm also in favor of what Lori just proposed, much more discussion and education among ourselves. I have been working very hard and doing a lot of reading and talking and learning about how to be an anti-racist. And I really, really would like to have congregational support in that journey. And I think adopting the eighth principle would facilitate that. Whether we change the principles at a later date is irrelevant right now. I think this is an important process that we all need to be going through.
Thank you, Joni. Mark?
Okay, thanks, Sue, for all of the background information and helping us to understand Article 2 and the proposed eighth principle. So at this time, I would open the floor for and entertain a motion related to what we've heard and how we may proceed forward.
Bruce was the first hand, maybe?
Yeah. Leanne, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion in support of the concern I'm hearing from everybody about the need to dig into this further and move that we postpone any vote on the eighth principle to our own annual meeting in May. So postpone a vote on the eighth principle for our annual meeting.
Okay, so we have a motion and it's been seconded. Is there any discussion of that motion? I don't see any hands up in the sanctuary, but Leanne, I might ask you if you could just check the Zoom to see if anyone. Okay. Any discussion? So we will take a vote by raising your hand in the sanctuary and saying yes or no on Zoom. All those in favor of the motion on the floor, raise your hand. Leanne, could you repeat your motion?
The motion is to postpone a vote on adopting the eighth principle until our own annual meeting in May.
And Jessica, do you have that? Okay, good. It's in our minutes. So we have the motion. All those in favor, raise your hand. I got about 28 here and 29 in the sanctuary.
While she's counting those, I want to have you put on your calendar that our annual meeting will be the 21st of May. That will be a very, very important meeting. I hope we have as good a turnout for that as we've had today. Thank you for supporting the democratic process.
And do you have a count from Zoom yet? Okay. So that's about 41.
Looks like 12 in support.
Yeah, so that's a majority. Are there any opposed to this?
I count 5, Lori. Yeah.
Okay, 5 and 1 in the sanctuary. Okay, and so the clerk, please note that there's 6 in opposition to the motion. So the motion passes. A majority have voted to in favor of the motion to postpone a decision on this until the annual meeting. And so I think we've completed our 2 agenda items.
All we need to do now is just extinguish the chalice.
Extinguish the chalice. Thank you, Sue. We could do that. Is there a motion to adjourn? Okay, a second. We have a second. All those in favor of adjourning, raise your hand.
Thank you, everybody. Most appreciate it. Unrelated topic. Has anybody seen where I put my cane? Keep losing that thing.
Okay, good. Thank you for all your help on that.
What's really going to happen is Kate's going to be the person behind it at your recommendation, but she's not a council member. Right, there's good.
I just wondered if what your latest feeling was, where you want to go.
Yeah, what I wanted to do at the council meeting the other day was just get it, something done. And because I knew we had the airport. And so it's just a step forward. And I can, maybe I can actually, hey, Mark?
You can't have an annual meeting without a clerk.
No, we can't. We can't. So here's a question for you, Mr. Roberts Rules, and maybe part of our bylaws. The clerk will not be present for our annual meeting. Who can stand in for the clerk?
Is it addressed in the bylaws? Probably not.
I did not see it anywhere.
I think council can make that decision.
We voted me in as pro temp, but I'm also the chair, so we didn't know whether that was
Need to be clerk or mean?
to be like clerk pro temp. The person who's really going to be doing it is Kate, but she's not a council member.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I can be it on paper and you notes because she's really good at that.
I see. You are the clerk.
She's the chair. She's the
Yeah,
council chair.
I was at the last council meeting. They voted that I could serve as the temporary clerk, which I would call, pro temp. We can get somebody else. I just didn't know what the best protocol was because nobody else volunteered to do it.
Yeah, I think as long as council makes a conscious decision that Kate or whoever else does it.
Because at the annual meeting, I wouldn't be talking like I was here.
No, it would.
The chair doesn't
It's
really,
hard to do 2 things at once.
but the chair doesn't do what I did here at the annual meeting.
Oh, well, no, at the annual meeting, at the annual meeting, there'll be things that we need you to explain. You're gonna be busy at the annual meeting.
Well, as I say, nobody, and I'm looking at you, Francis, nobody volunteered to serve as
the clerk. I asked, and I said, okay, if no one's gonna do it, then I guess it leaves it up to me. And I contacted Kate because that was your recommendation.
Did the clerk for a year. at
Yes,
least. She
but
did it.
she's not a council member.
Well, I think we can appoint her. We can appoint her as either temporary or acting clerk. I think so on this.
All right, we'll talk about that in April
It's
for
not
sure.
It's not a decision making.